Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, the Black Matters Lives organization, that terrorist organization that we've spoken about on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer is at it again. This time they're rioting in Milwaukee, setting police patrol cars on fire, and are just making utter fools of themselves, as is par for the course with them, in response to police shooting an armed suspect. So what is it with respect to the current racial atmosphere in the United States that just seems to be the worst that it has been in nearly 40 years? The Black Lives Matters organization wants to sit there and act as though there has been no progress made in the United States of America since the civil rights era. Of course, it's a bunch of bovine excrement, and nothing could be further from the truth, but that is the cultural Marxist agenda that they wish to propagate and to put forward. And of course, they're going to find willing allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. The point and purpose of that being is that just as the Black Lives Matters organization is driven by this insatiable, frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agenda, so too are those in the media. And I know that we've discussed this many times on multiple occasions on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but it does bear repeating again here because we see that these nefarious elements are going out of their way to try and paint this picture of victimhood. There's this victim mentality that always seems to go hand in fist with the entitlement mentality that has been plaguing the United States for far too long now. And of course, what we have always been focused upon here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is to provide you with the truth, to try and cut through all of this fog of deception that has been put forth by far too many who have the attention of the American people. And the reason that we do is we want the truth to shine through, as the truth always has a way of shining through, and it will set us free. But that's not what these people are concerned with. They're not concerned with true freedom. They're not concerned with an ordered society. It's all about their twisted machinations, come hell or high water, irrespective of what anyone else thinks. It's just about them. It really is a selfish mentality that they adhere to. And it's one that really has no place in an open and honest, as well as free society like that of the United States of America. Now, of course, they're going to sit here and try and say that I, as a white Protestant male who's straight, just can't understand what's going on in the world. I am part of this great oppressor, part of the patriarchy, part of the plantation mentality that is some relic that has lingered for 150 plus years. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth. I am a constitutional compositionist. That means I believe in equal protection under the law. It means I believe in the clear and concise language that's contained in the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments. It also means that I adhere to the supreme law of the land, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution, is none other than the Constitution itself. And that's something they don't adhere to. I know we've discussed it before, where they try and say, well, it's negative rights. The Constitution's just about negative rights, as if that by going down that twisted line of semantics and logic, we could sit there and say that the Constitution's a bad thing, that the Constitution hasn't done anything for anybody. At least that is the message they want to convey. They want you to think that it's this quaint, antiquated document that has no place in a modern society. But if you look at the ones who are really out there, going out and doing the destructive strains, the ones that are making hooligans out of themselves, it's those who belong to the rank and file of the Black Lives Matters domestic terrorist organization. And there really is no other way to put it. There's no other way to describe it. There's no other picture to paint with it. The canvas has been set, and it is the canvas they created. We aren't the ones that brought this into fruition. We aren't the ones who sought to make this come to into reality. They are the ones that do this. They are the ones that want to go back to segregation. It's as though they have all of these programs, which they do, which was just brought up in the news a couple of days ago here last week by our local radio show here, in which they were talking about schools that were have offering classes that were only available to black people. Now, I thought that we went away from separate but equal. I thought that was the whole impetus and drive behind Brown versus Board of Education. I thought that was part of the whole aspect of integration. But now it's gone so far the other way with the pendulum. It has swung so far in the other direction that they are pushing for separate but equal now. They are going down the route of trying to push racial animus to become an accepted part. And it's all done by this hypocritical notion of trying to say that, well, we're doing it to correct the systemic and institutionalized racism of the past. Now, how does that work? It doesn't. It really does not work for any of us. Truth be told, what they are trying to do is to go back to the tried and true identity politics, the divisiveness that has always been a core component of what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist left engages in. They like to have American citizen pitted against American citizen because then they think they have their avenue through which they can control the narrative that goes forth within the community. That way they can redefine the community, and then they can have their plague just go from one end to the other. And it's as my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, and I have mentioned on previous episodes, that it's about control, power, and control. That's what they care about. And if they can control that narrative, and can fully control the agenda, then they can force the nation to go down a path that it was never originally intended to go down. And folks, this is why having a knowledge of our national history and the great events that have occurred within the confines of the United States is important, because when you tie that in with a fluent and working knowledge of our United States Constitution and an understanding of the clear and concise language contained within its four corners, you begin to realize exactly what it is that these people are trying to orchestrate upon the decent, hard-working, true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people. It comes down to that. That's what they're working towards. That's what their diabolical and twisted goals are all about. And it has really no place here, because what it's doing is it's trying to erase all the gains that have been made since the time of the civil rights movement. And it makes you wonder, what exactly was it that the Democrats were hoping to achieve by embracing the civil rights language? Well, the Democrat Party is the same party that it's always been. I know that they like to go out there with this false narrative, this erroneous claim that the Democrat Party is the one that has been for freedom, or that it somehow magically shifted with this so-called Southern strategy. Again, this is a type of stereotyping that is done with carte blanche on the left. They want to marginalize a particular geographical region of the United States, and its ugly head reared itself again during the summer of political correctness. which was the summer of 2015, where we saw that consolidated, well orchestrated effort to attack the Southern Cross battle flag as if an inanimate object could have inspired Dylan Storm Roof to go out and carry out that twisted, senseless slaughter of innocent black parishioners at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. And the politicians just ate it up. The politicians ate it up because we have been plagued by the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism. You see, it makes no sense that they would be selective in their outrage. It makes no sense that they would carry this out unless, of course, you delve a bit deeper into what it is they are hoping to achieve. And what they're hoping to achieve is the complete dismantling of the longest contiguous or uninterrupted running constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic in the entire course of human events. There's no way around that, folks. That's just a deep-seated part of who we are, both as a nation and as a people. But that doesn't matter to them. Again, the only thing that matters to them is their agenda. The only thing that matters to them is doubling down on the efforts that they have attempted to put forth in redefining what the United States is. Then they can fundamentally and irreparably transform the United States of America away from the federalist representative republic that we all know and love into some unacceptable, untenable, and unsustainable Fabian socialist dystopia. It's Orwellian in its scope and nightmare, because if you recall what George Orwell did in one of his magnus opuses of 1984, it was the way they played with language, the way that they could take extreme opposite positions with a straight face and try and convince the people that that is what the nation needs, and that what they were doing was acting in the nation's best interest, when, again, nothing could be further from the truth. It was all about centralizing power for themselves, amassing power in an illicit fashion at the great expense of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. So we see that their entire modus operandi here is not based in any sapient logic or reason. Rather, it's based on raw emotionalism, because that is how they know they can best control, manipulate, and bamboozle mass swaths, the American electorate, and the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. Again, this is why it is so important to be able to pay attention to all that is occurring within the arena of American politics. But the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, their allies in the historical revisionists, and the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media have purposely worked in such a way as to overzealously regulate the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, thereby essentially eradicating their effectiveness in being able to combat these sorts of things that are haunting us. And therefore, they can move forward with their agenda with little fear of the American people being able to not only fathom what it is they're trying to do, but to be able to even effectually come up and form a plan of resistance. You see, the danger of what it is that they have done to us is that they have worked out a 100-year plan. They have been incrementally working to strangle the life out of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. It's all by design. There's no mistake in the actions they do. There's no mistake in the things that they have attempted to foist upon us. This was all deliberate and well orchestrated. They are not about live and let live. They are not about backing away from their policies. And that's why they politicize everything. Every action they take is calculated for a political outcome. It's calculated to push forth the political agenda that they wish to achieve. Now, does that help us as a nation and as a people? No, because it is diametrically opposed to all of the values that we hold near and dear in these United States of America. It's designed to work against us. It is designed and developed to weaken us. And they have been working meticulously towards this goal for the past 150 plus years now, folks. So we cannot expect to secure or achieve instant gratification with these people. Rather, we have to double down on our efforts and develop a plan of our own. A plan of our own that is not based merely on instant gratification. A plan of our own that is deeply rooted in the natural law tenets that compose the bedrock foundation of our republic that can be implemented in incremental fashion. We have to be just as wily as they are. And make no mistake about it, folks, they are crafty. They are the ones that work towards these goals for so long. They think that they can carry this out without any backlash or any repercussions coming to hit them throughout the process. Well, the only way that that can come to fruition, the only way that their twisted machinations can work in the manner in which they develop them and design them is if we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, simply just lay back and allow it to happen. That's why it's always been said that the United States of America would never be toppled by some external force. It would only cease to exist if the forces from within had weakened to such a degree to infiltrate the pillars of our society, our morality, our nuclear family structure, and seek to tear this nation apart from within. Well, that's what we're seeing. That is what has been implemented. That is the plan they're orchestrating. That is how they are attempting to pit American citizen against American citizen. And what we see with the Black Lives Matters organization, just going out and inciting all of this violence that is occurring in Milwaukee right now, as I sit here and speak into this microphone, is part of that goal. It's part of achieving that diabolical scheme of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. And so we see that identity politics falls into that realm. Identity politics is a major contributor to the problems that are facing us because ultimately there is only one identity that matters. And that identity is found in the beautifully poetic, clear, and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. That's what defines us as a nation and as a people. That is the only thing that we are called upon to swear allegiance to. That is the only thing that unifies us. And yet, that is the very thing that they seek to go out and attack on a daily basis. That is what they hope to tear apart time and time again, irrespective of the deleterious and detrimental impact that it will have on American culture, society, national security, what have you. That's the true nefarious nature of what it is they do. That's why they are so dangerous, and it's why we must be willing to take whatever steps are necessary to truly make a stand against them, and to take a stance against their twisted machinations that are just designed to destroy us. And of course, they are going to go out and use whatever fluff, whatever subterfuge they can to try and make it a false narrative. They want to say that the system is systemically racist. And essentially, that's just an excuse for implanting racism where none truly exists. That's just a doctrine used to try and foist their twisted views upon the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. It's because they can't find it. It's because the system is not, as they like to claim, inherently racist. That is one of the great lies that they are attempting to orchestrate onto the American people. But why do they do it other than to achieve that twisted and diabolical notion that is the leftist ideology? Well, it's because they have nothing else. They know they can't compete in the marketplace of ideas. They know that the tenets and principles that they adhere to is merely theft by any other name, and therefore they know that they don't have a chance to do it in the traditional means. So they turn to terrorism. And terrorism is a political tool for the desperate. It is used by those who feel as though they have no chance of doing it through the, or accomplishing their goals rather, through the regular or ordinary avenues of polity. It's what wicked people turn to. And it has led to death, carnage, chaos, anarchy, and depravity everywhere that it has been turned to in the course of human events. Folks, I wish I had words of comfort and solace to convey with respect to this, but this is exactly what we are seeing unfold in our nation before our very eyes. And of course, the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media aren't going to go out and convey that this is really related to a left-wing attempt to redefine the nation. They don't want to do that because that would cause irreparable damage to their dark and twisted Fabian socialist propagandistic agenda that they've been working on ever since the time of William Randolph Hearst and his newspaper conglomerate at the turn of the 20th century. Again, these are simply the facts. They're available, they can be seen, and of course, we don't want you to merely take what we say here at face value. The entire purpose of Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer is to empower you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members. We have to analyze what we see based on a framework of history, based on a framework of law, and of common sense. But common sense is something that we find is in very short supply in modern America. Everyone has been stoked up into such a raw emotional state that it's hard to be truthful. It's hard to be objective and to really analyze these things because there's an anti-intellectual strain that has been embraced by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. It's again why we can't just have everything be negotiable. It's why we can't negotiate with terrorists, yet that's exactly what Barack Hussein Obama is doing. That's exactly what the nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP, the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian, Donald J. Trump, has said. He's come out and reiterated time and again that everything is negotiable. But certain things are not negotiable, and there are certain parties and factions which we should never engage in negotiations with, particularly when our non-negotiable, fundamental, and inalienable rights, which were endowed to us by our Creator, the God of nature himself, are being placed on the bargaining table. Again, this is why George Washington, in his farewell address, attempted to warn against the dangers of factionalization. Because if we break ourselves into these disparate and competing factions, we begin to lose sight of the greater image, the greater message, the things that hold the utmost importance to us, both as a nation and as a people. It's not something that can be ignored. It's not something that can be swept under the rug, but that's exactly what the historical revisionists that infest the ivory towers of academia all throughout the United States of America would want to occur. It's what they believe. It's how they act. It's what their goal is. But how does it work for the best interests of the American people? Well, the most clear and concise answer that I can give as I sit here and speak into this microphone is that it is not going to be able to do anything that would be in the confines of the best interests of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. It's designed to be diametrically opposed to that. Its inherent purpose is to work against that. And that is what these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been engaging in for a century and a half now. It's why we've told you about it on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer. So, again, it falls upon us, the onus falls upon us to not only spread knowledge with respect to our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, but also to proactively maintain and safeguard those rights. And the truly nefarious thing that domestic terrorist organizations like that of the Black Lives Matters organization do is they try and couch it into they are fighting for rights, they're fighting for civil liberties, they're fighting for freedom. But they sure have an odd way of showing it. If you are fighting for freedom, why are you then thereby attacking the rights of your fellow citizen? Because the way that a true federalist representative Republican form of government like that we have here in the United States of America is that if you encroach upon the fundamental and inalienable rights of your fellow individual popular sovereign, that's when you are in the criminal justice system. That is when you are prosecuted. That is when you have due process under the law in which you can have your rights abridged until you pay back for the crime that you have committed. But there is this great disconnect within the United States right now, particularly with respect to the left. They don't want to hold anybody accountable because then that means that their ideology, which is based upon claiming to take care of people, claiming to keep people in a decent position from cradle until grave, is exposed for the fraudulent malarkey and garbage that it really is. And they can ill afford that because if they start to suffer a mass exodus from their system, it means that their political movement is dead. It would be nice to have their political movement be dead because, as I mentioned earlier, it's just theft by any other name, but no, they don't work towards that. They work towards a much darker, twisted goal. And that really does put us in an untenable, unsustainable, and unacceptable position. And that's what they have been working towards time and time again. And they really honestly believe that they see a light at the end of the tunnel and that that means that victory for their diabolical schemes are within reaching distance. They think that they are about to unleash their plan onto the body politic of the United States of America to irreparably and permanently transform us away from being the federalist, constitutionally endowed representative republic that we have been since our inception some 235 years ago into this Orwellian, Fabian socialist dystopia and nightmare. But we shouldn't allow them to make that come into fruition. We should not allow them to get away with that because that is not what is in the best interest of the American people. That is not in the best interest of the American nation. But here we are. We are in the midst of a presidential election cycle in which we have two mainstay candidates that really don't adhere to the supreme law of the land. They find no inherent or intrinsic value in the supreme law of the land. And therefore, both of them are really not going to do a damn bit of good with respect to all of these problems that are plaguing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And it's a dangerous scenario that is unfurling before our very eyes, one that really has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. But here we are. As I sit here and speak into this microphone, this race war that they've been pushing for seems to be coming to reality. It's not good for blacks, it's not good for whites, but why are we looking at ourselves divided along racial lines? Why is it that the Democrats always pit American citizen against American citizen so that it is counterproductive, so that we lose sight of our national identity, our national character, heritage, and spirit as well? Well, it's because they don't want that to be there. Whenever you have a radical left-wing ideology, it is always about destruction. Destruction is what composes it. Destruction rather is what makes it go into fruition. That's why Mao Zedong in communist China pushed forth with the Cultural Revolution, something that the communist Chinese government today says was a mistake, but they didn't think it was a mistake at that time. It's why you see the Fabian Society that traces its origins back to 19th century Great Britain was developed and designed to essentially attack the pre-existing English cultural and societal system. It's all about furthering their agenda at any cost. irrespective of the harm that it causes to the society, irrespective to the harm it causes to the people that are there, that they rather facetiously claim that they're trying to aid and assist, that doesn't cross into their mind. That doesn't enter into the forefront or to the fray. It's all just about their agenda come hell or high water. But that's a dangerous, insatiable, unstoppable sort of system, unless, of course, you oppose it in the same fashion that they attempt to oppose you. That has been the mistake of the conservative movement. That is the mistake that movement conservatives have made for far too long now. We have essentially gone along with a Confucius style of philosophy of live and let live. But they're not about letting you live. They're not about leaving you alone. They're not about allowing you to do what you think is best for you because they want the government to think for you. They think the government knows what's best. They think the government fully understands how to make this system work. When the government is the worst agitator of all of this. The government is the one that, in so many instances, caused and created these problems, particularly by distancing and divorcing itself from the clear and concise language found within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. That's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have been discussing this time and again. It's because it is of that magnitude and importance, and it is the key that will unlock the chains and shackles of governmental tyranny, bondage, servitude, and ultimately oppression that have been holding back the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. But it's not something that's just easy to admit. It's not something that's just easy to allow to come to fruition. It requires these deep, prodding, soul-searching questions that none of us really like to go through. Nobody likes to be interrogated like that. But we have to. We have to if we are ever to bring this back from the brink of ruination. I'm sorry, that's the only way it can be accomplished. So, some of the reporting that's been going on in Milwaukee shows that these Black Lives Matters organization domestic terrorists have just been going out and shouting slogans such as Black Power and have been attacking white drivers as they attempt to pass them by on the street. Again, how does this show that they're about equality? How does this show that they're about unity? How does this show that they are seeking the same benefits that everyone else does? You can't have a great life. You can't have a free life if you are just constantly attacking and destroying property. It's counterproductive, it's asinine, it's ridiculous. But of course, that question that I'm using to start this segment is one in which you must presuppose that equality and equal treatment, all of that, is their end goal. Now, one would think that that's their end goal. That's certainly the way that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media wants to portray it. That's the way they'll paint the picture. But again, it's not based in reality. Because the reality is they want special treatment. They want to be considered superior. They are acting in a black supremacist way. Well, any type of supremacist group that is based on racial ideology, that is based on this cancerous notion of identity politics, is not about true equality. It's just that they've managed to figure out that that's one of those buzzwords that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have managed to utilize in such a way as to cause the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people of the United States of America, to close our minds, to simply stop thinking about things, and therefore they can go back to their tried and true tactic and strategy, although it is threadbare at this point, of divide and conquer. That's what this is all about, folks. They want to cause revolutionary, drastic, ground-shaking changes, and they want to do it by pitting American citizen against American citizen. That makes it easier. It makes it to where we're all distracted, looking away from the fact that what they are trying to orchestrate here really has no place in an open, honest, and free society like that of the United States of America. Of course, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have been attempting to warn you of this danger ever since we first took off over the friendly airwaves back on September 11th of 2015. And folks, the reason that we chose that as our launch date, as the premiere episode of this, our state of the art radio program, was because it was a time of great unity in the United States. And it is just unspeakably tragic that we have to have an atrocity on the scale of 9/11 to draw us together, both as a nation and as a people. The strains of division and the divisive politics of the various factions that control the American system of polity have pushed us into a way of being separate, into allowing ourselves to be distracted from the things that should be of the utmost concern to us and blinding us to the reality that faces us. And that's all by design. It's all done on purpose. It's what the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs pointed to in his magnus opus from 50 years ago, that of Keynes at Harvard. He demonstrated how the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist left, which is just hell bent on completely and utterly annihilating the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people, have gone into creating factions. They have gone into the art of semantics to try and change the meanings of words away from their traditional definitions, thereby orchestrating power, thereby orchestrating control. Again, that's what they do. It's about power, control, and manipulation. That's what they've always worked towards. You see, the truth of the matter is, what would really frighten them is if we started to band together, to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity, to reject the fluff that they're trying to cram down our throats against our will. That's why they, again, turn to these tactics and strategies of divide and conquer. None of it is being done to promote the interests of the American people. It's not even being done to promote the interests of the special interest groups and the insular and discrete minorities, as the legal community would refer to it as, because, again, without the family, without the core nuclear family that is the fundamental building block of society, you begin to see blight occur within these disparate groups. And clearly, since the time of the civil rights movement, we've seen the implosion of the black family. It's a tragic thing to see. They used to receive the type of support that a family can provide. In fact, that only a family can provide, and that's gone now. It's gone now because we have an immoral government that is peddling in the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism that just insipidly destroys the bedrock foundations and pillars of communities and society. If you want to talk about racism and you want to talk about systemic racism, you need to look no further than the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. Remember that Margaret Sanger, who helped create Planned Parenthood, wanted to do that to racially purify the United States. She was all about eugenics. That's something that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media conveniently sweeps under the rug. That's something that's not truly taught in American history courses in our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border, again, because it does not co-align with or line up to their twisted machinations, their propagandistic agenda, and therefore they cannot allow it to go forth because it would allow people to question their motives, to challenge what they are trying to foist upon the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. I think one of the lessons that we can take away from Milwaukee is that what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists are trying to achieve here is nothing short of agitation. Again, it's to cause tension, animosity, and hatred to just boil up in the hearts, souls, and minds of the American people, thereby allowing them to push forth their agenda irrespective of what it does to all the rest of us. And that's really a diabolical, twisted, and evil mentality and philosophy if you stop and think about it and examine it in an objective fashion. It's based on hatred. Everything with them is based on hatred. It's not looking for the common good. That's what they rather deceitfully claim is their goal. That's what they try and convince everyone that they're working towards. And they do find that pop culture supports that, and that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media peddles that for them. And therefore, so many people who just don't pay attention to the deeper meanings of the message that they're trying to convey and the darker aspects of the characteristics that they are attempting to foist upon the American people just don't realize it. They don't see it. And that's all part and parcel of their plan. It's all nefarious. It's all divisive. It's all destructive. And that's what they do. They go out and they destroy. They go out and claim that they are victims, and somehow they use that as an excuse and justification for some of the most barbaric behavior that has been put on display before the American people. But what it really traces its roots to, folks, is Cloward and Piven. Cloward and Piven, that whole system of revolutionary reform that was devised by two egghead academicians from Columbia University all the way back in the 1950s. The ones who were diametrically opposed to the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs and his good friend and business partner there with Archibald Roosevelt. They were the ones that wanted to overwhelm the system, to create problems, to henpeck the system, and then when it seemed that anarchy, chaos, death, destruction, and barbarism had become the new norm in the United States, their great expectation was that the body politique would rise up in solidarity and unity in a singular voice and proclaim that they needed the government to take control and to permanently create a welfare state in the United States. Now, it didn't quite work out the way that Cloward and Piven had designed it to. Nevertheless, we do find that with LBJ's Great Society that came in the 1960s, that we did fall. We did fall into the trap of turning things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the war on poverty, all of this nonsense into a permanent fixture of the American community and society. But when you stop and think about it, what that has done is it has established this victimhood mentality, this entitlement mentality that has only ballooned to biblical proportions over the past 40 to 50 years. And it's not working like they claimed it would. But that's the thing. That's the one takeaway, the one consistent strain of truth that always happens with these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. They always come forth and proclaim that they aren't going to do something, that the system's just a small, incremental step. But once it is in place, it never winds up being temporary, nor does it wind up being some small step. Recall that they said 80 years ago, with the formation of the New Deal's Social Security plan, that that would never be used as a form of identification, that it would never be used as a social safety net, that it was not meant to be permanent. Yet here we are 80 years later. It is permanent. It's used for identification purposes. It is used as a social safety net, and it is draining the life out of the body politique of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. There's no other way to put it. So how do we overcome this great message of division, this great wave of divisiveness, this destructive aspect of identity politics? Well, it's got to be going back to basics. That's what we have to do. That is the way that you overcome these things. And the basics in the United States is none other than our shared United States Constitution. You see, when you go back to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, that's when you discover that the Constitution says in the 14th Amendment that we have equal protection under the laws. That's what the whole notion of equal protection under the law is. That's why the United States of America is referred to as a nation of laws and not of men. It's meaning that we are all equally held to the same legal standards and principles as everyone else, and it is to apply equally across the board. But with this new age caste system that I discussed the other day on a solo flight special edition of our state of the art radio program, we see that they are doing whatever they can in their power to break that down, to work away from that, to strip and deprive that from us, and to make it an identity politics based system, which helps them pit American citizen against American citizen and thereby create this diabolical system that has no place in an open and honest and free society like that of the United States of America. And again, the onus falls on we the people in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing republic of ours to stand up and say no. At what point are we going to finally say that enough is enough, that we don't wish for our society to be plagued with this sort of divisiveness and this sort of destruction? When we see that these Black Lives Matters domestic terrorists just run out in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and destroy public property and harass and intimidate drivers because of the color of their skin, why is this considered any different than the sort of Jim Crow stuff that they attack, the old segregation days that they attack, what they constantly bring up as the original sin of the United States South? Why do they never hold these people accountable or to the same standards? Well, it's because of quote unquote systemic racism. It's as Barack Hussein Obama said when he went in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and said that racism was a part of America's DNA. Folks, you really can't make that crap up. He did go out and say that.
Racism, we are not cured of, clearly, and it's not just a matter of it not being polite to say nigger in public. That's not the measure of whether racism still exists or not. It's not just a matter of overt discrimination. We have societies don't overnight completely erase everything that happened 200 to 300 years prior.
Lawful. Obama also said the history of slavery.
I mean, there you have it. That's where he was sitting there trying to say that racism is a systemic part of the United States. It's something we can never overcome, and that it's just who we are. And he's trying to blame it again on gun owners. And again, forgive the audio quality there, folks. It's just where I was getting the source from. But I just wanted to get just a sense there of what it is that he's saying, that what it is that he has done, which I find is wholly disconnected from what we hold as intrinsic values, both as a nation and as a people. Because when you stop and consider that the United States of America is, as I've mentioned previously in this segment, and indeed on prior episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, the United States of America is based off of self-evident truths. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. But apparently Barack Hussein Obama doesn't believe that. Hillary Rotten Clinton doesn't believe that. We don't know what the mafioso Quafioso believes in regards to that, but you know who really doesn't believe it are those Black Lives Matters domestic terrorists. But we know that the Department of Homeland Security's little chairman or secretary there, and J. Johnson, went out and agreed with Austin Mayor Salazar that right-wingers, and yes, I did use the next word, are just as dangerous as the frothing at the mouth Islamo-fascist terrorists. But nothing could be further from the truth. This is, again, bovine excrement that they are attempting to cram down our throats against our will to paint a false and erroneous narrative. But remember, one of the things that we have also previously warned about on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and that is this idea that a false narrative, particularly in the arena of American politics, can be more powerful than truth or reality. And that's what they are hoping for. They are, again, hoping to create these systemic buzzwords to make American citizens simply rawly emote to close down their mental faculties and capability to buy into this twisted line and agenda that they have adopted as their own platform, as their own position, what they want us all to accept as the way the system is supposed to work, or to tell us what we're supposed to believe with regards and respect to the system, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. That's the problem with these guys. It's not reality based. It's not based in the truth. It's all about their narrative. It's all about their agenda, come hell or high water. But it does not serve the best interests of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. That's never been the goal. That's never been what they're about. So therefore they go forth and they lie. They do all of these just intellectually disingenuous spiels, and they expect us to accept that as the truth. They expect us to bow down and not question it. And if we do, then they can come out with the buzzwords that have become the quintessential pillar of their twisted ideology, the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism. And those terms of which I speak are like, oh, if you disagree with the president, you're racist. Or what's going to become the new one with Hillary Rotten Clinton, oh, if you disagree with our presidential nominee, or God forbid that she does become president, but that is highly looking like the outcome of this 2016 presidential election cycle. Heaven forbid if you don't agree with Madam President, then you're obviously just a sexist. You're obviously just a systemic type. You have male privilege. I can't wait to hear that one. I can't wait until they try and dust that one off, but you know they're going to. Just as they have white privilege, just as they have Christian privilege. But again, all of that is not founded in human dignity. None of that is founded in reality. None of that's based on the truth. That's just their twisted machinations. That's their goal, their propagandistic agenda that really has no place in an open, honest, and free society like that of the United States of America. But they are going to double down on these efforts because they think that they have found a niche that works with them politically, something that they can use to pressure the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, to accept their grand scheme, to adopt that as something that is a new norm in the United States of America, irrespective of the fact that that is the direct, exact, and polar opposite of the foundational image that our founding fathers had for this nation, going back to its inception some 235 plus years ago. None of that matters. Not to them. It's not about that. It's not about the truth. It's just about their goals. Now, why? Why do we have to accept their goals? Why do we have to sit here and say that, well, we can't speak up against that. We can't question the logical soundness of the claims they're making. That just shows that we hate them. What happened to civil discourse? What happened to being able to disagree? You know, one of the great pillars of the foundation of this federalist representative republic of ours that is constitutionally endowed is to be able to disagree with one another, to be able to discuss in civil matter so that we can come together and find a logical conclusion, a logical consensus. They're not about consensus building. They're not about bridge building. They're about just lobbing somebody over the head with a billy club and dragging them around saying, if you disagree with us, then you are some racist, xenophobe, homophobic, hateful person. So in that sense, what we can say with respect to the modern era is, if the Victorian era was defined by its bizarre beliefs and behaviors and social building towards sexuality, then this generation is the New Age Victorian with respect to offensiveness and political correctness. Political correctness makes it to where we are hampering and inhibiting our ability to relate to one another in our capacity as not only popular sovereigns, but just as basic human beings. That's what it is. It's a dehumanizing element. They say that we are the ones that are trying to push for inhumane and inhuman efforts, goals and agendas and plans and platforms, I would challenge them to hold up a mirror to themselves and see the stark, harsh reality for what it is, because they are the ones that are in denial. They are the ones that are pushing forth a false narrative that has no basis in reality, no connection to the real world, but they just expect us to accept it as the truth. They expect us to shut up and acquiesce to whatever plan it is that they wish to foist upon us. But that has no basis in reality. That has no sound foundation. And it's certainly not a timeless thing like the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of both our shared United States Constitution and indeed our representative Republican form of government. You see, those are the things that they attack. Those are the things that they cannot accept because it shows their ideology for the farce and fraud that it truly is. And so if that is allowed to be accepted by the general public, it means that they will be relegated to the rubbish bin of history where they so rightfully deserve and belong to be. But they can't accept that. That means that all of their efforts, these meticulous efforts that they have so tirelessly worked towards in incessant and incremental fashion for the past 150 plus years, will have been in vain. And that would just drive them insane. It would cause them to implode. They can't fathom that. They can't accept that. That cannot be allowed to come to fruition, because then that really would be a coup de grace to their movement, for lack of a better term. So here we are. We find ourselves in this swirling contention of racial animosity, the fans of which have been stoked by Barack Hussein Obama and his disastrous regime for these past 2 terms, and it's almost reaching a boiling point. It is reaching a point now to where they think that they cannot be held accountable for their actions, because we saw that Mosby and others tried to go after police officers who were doing their best to keep law and order in place. So they're essentially going after law enforcement officers for doing their duties, obligations, and responsibilities, doing their job. And so then they want it to be that those who carry out crimes, that engage in these riots and destructive behavior, should not be held accountable. That is the true diabolical and twisted nature of what these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists are all about, and what they do and what they hope to orchestrate and carry out. It's despicable. It's disgusting. It's difficult to comprehend that that has become a new norm, that has become the very thing that they wish to foist upon us. But truth be told, that's what they do. That's how they act. That's what they believe. It's what they try and force upon us. And we see that the unacceptable nature of it is just coming forth as a new norm in society. But are we really going to allow that to become the way that we're defined both as a nation and as a people? Are we really going to allow them to tear us that far away from the supreme law of the land, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, is none other than the Constitution itself? Because if we are going to allow them to do that, then we really are in a much more degraded position than one could previously fathom. And I certainly hope to God that that's not the case here in the United States, because we are endowed and blessed with the greatest birthright of any people on the face of God's green earth. But we have to act responsibly. We have to stand up for our rights. We have to be the watchmen for liberty. And of course, I know that's far easier said than done, but it must be done. It's the only way that we are ever going to be able to place the United States of America back onto the path to prosperity. It really is. And that's why we say fostering that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution is the quintessential aspect of what's necessary to bring this nation back. But again, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, they aren't going to want to convey that in a proper context. They're not going to want to discuss it in the way that it's meant to be. No, they're going to want to control it in the way that they always have, to try and make it appear as though those of us who wish to preserve and maintain our dignity and our way of life, both as a nation and as a people, somehow we're the kooks, somehow we're the crazy ones, we're the ones that are destroying the nation. When again, that's just bovine excrement. Nothing, truly, absolutely nothing, could be further from the truth. So we have to be able to combat this, as they are not going to relinquish on this. They're not going to relent. They're not going to try and move away from it. The way that we accomplish that, the way that we do that, is to come together as a nation and as a people to speak in solidarity and unity that no, we are not going to tolerate this. No, we are not going to accept this. No, this is not a new norm in the United States of America. But that's how they want it to be. That's the farce they wish to pull over your eyes. That's the political wool that they wish to drape over your eyes, to blind you to reality, to blind you to the truth. And the only way that that can come to fruition, the only way that that can really happen, is if we allow them to do it. But we don't have to accept that. That is not the natural course of events in the United States of America. That is not the mentality of the American people. That is not what allowed us, in our relatively brief yet illustrious history, to overcome every hurdle, obstacle, and adversity that has been placed in our path. We've been able to do that. We've been able to overcome that because of those natural law tenets that form the unshakable bedrock foundation of our Constitution and our representative Republican form of government. That is what it means to be an American citizen. That's what it means to embrace our system. That's what it means to love this country. But all of these things are now being told as racist. You know, they've even come out and said that the Gadsden flag, that with the coiled diamond back on it saying, "Don't tread on me," that now, which is a flag that goes back to the roots of the foundation of the United States of America, they're now trying to proclaim that as racist. They're trying to vilify it just as they did the Southern Cross battle flag. Flags are not racist. And the ones who attribute or attach said attributes to them in that fashion, they are the true racists. They are the ones that are dabbling in identity politics. They are the ones who are orchestrating this divisiveness that is gripping the hearts, souls, and minds of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. They are the wicked ones. It's not those of us that embrace our freedom. It's not those of us who love and adore what the United States of America stands for, both as a nation and as a people. No, that is their machination. That is what they do. And it should not be tolerated. That's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have declared war on the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism, because those two disgusting ideologies really do have no place in an open, honest, and free society like that of the United States of America. But the only way that we can really get that message and point across is to band together, is to go back to basics in this country. And again, I know that's far easier said than done, but we must do it. Because no one else can, no one else is endowed to do it, no one else has the authority or the wherewithal to do so. The onus falls on our shoulders, and our shoulders alone, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty here in the United States. But that's not the worst of it, folks. The worst of it is that these Black Lives Matters terrorist organizations going out and creating all of the havoc that they have required that the National Guard be called out. That's just beyond belief. It's beyond belief that they feel it's necessary to go around terrorizing decent, hard-working, law-abiding, red-blooded American citizens. But if you recall what we've been saying with respect to the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists since the first time we took off over the friendly airwaves, it's always been about just spreading terror in the decent, hardworking communities of the United States of America. It's not based in reality. It's not based in any type of good dealings or social graces with respect to the hardworking, true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And that's what is so nefarious about the Black Lives Matters organizations, as well as all of these other nefarious, frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist leftist groups. It's all about sowing the seeds of dissent and divisiveness into the body politic of these United States of America by not only having the narrative peddled by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media in such a way as to fit their twisted and nihilistic agenda, they can then basically make it appear as though they're victims. And again, it goes back to that victim card mentality, the entitlement mentality that has just been running rampant with the left fringes for generation after successive generation. And Barack Hussein Obama has been a master at attempting to make this sort of identity politics the hallmark of his disastrous regime. And certainly we're going to get more of that under Hillary Rotten Clinton. And I'm not so sure that if by some cruel twist of fate the mafioso quafioso manages to secure victory in the general election cycle slated for later this November, that things would play out any differently either. And this goes to the danger that my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, and I, and indeed our first air marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward, have been warning about with respect to the mafioso quafioso for damn near a year now, folks. He satiates and satisfies all of the two-dimensional, stereotypical caricatures that the left attempts to pigeonhole the right with in these United States of America. That's been part of the danger of him. But I'm not sure whether it would be considered just as a part of the raw emotionalism and anger that it's gripping the hearts, souls, and minds of so many members of the American electorate that has allowed this to come to fruition and allowed him to succeed as much as he has. But I don't think that's just it enough. There's also this idea of the open primaries. We do have to deal with the open primaries, allowing Democrats to cross over and to unleash an Operation Chaos on the gutless opposition party, or GOP, in election cycle after successive election cycle exposes us to the risks of falling prey and victim to this sort of nonsense on more than one occasion. And it shows that there is an aspect of the system that's rigged, but it's not the way that Donald J. Trump would have us all believe. It's rigged in so much as Republicans say are being diluted and diminished by these open primaries. It's baffling to me as to why this is considered a decent way to carry about a primary process. And again, we've done an episode in the past that dealt with the way that the primary system came about and the way that it was originally done by Congress itself, and that it was a populist movement that carried out the first ever um, primary type process and caucus type process. It was originally done by a caucus within Congress itself. Now, again, the historical revisionists aren't going to want to teach this. They're going to want to teach that it was somehow mired in identity politics and was about keeping certain segments and portions of the population down, to keep them downtrodden and out of the general electorate cycle. But if you go back to the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of not only our shared United States Constitution, but also our Federalist representative Republican system of government, you find that those tenets are pure. They're ideologically pure. They are not mired by what these people are trying to say. Does it mean that in practice it was always carried out in perfect form and fashion? No. We are human beings, and our nation has always been run by human beings. It is just impossible to try and claim that something could have been carried out to sheer perfection. Again, the founding fathers even spoke to that in the poetic language found in the preamble to the United States Constitution when they said that we, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution in order to create a more perfect union. That, in and of itself, speaks to the fact that the system was not perfect, that humanity itself in this earthly realm cannot achieve perfection. It's just impossible. And to expect that of the government is a truly naive position for someone to take, but that is what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists want to do. But they never hold their own ideology up to such strict standards of scrutiny. They never allow themselves to be questioned in such a way. And again, that is part of the reason why they wish to turn to raw emotionalism. The only way that they can carry out their dark and twisted machinations is to attempt to force us to accept their ideology based on raw emotionalism, thereby allowing the American electorate to be more easily manipulated and controlled. Again, that's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have tried to go out on a limb and warn you about the dangers of allowing yourselves to be whipped up into such a raw emotional frenzy, because it shuts down your mental faculties and it exposes you to the dark and twisted as well as nefarious machinations of those charlatans, con artists, hucksters, and snake oil salesmen who merely wish to illicitly amass power unto themselves at the great expense of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. And of course, that too can only come to fruition if we, in our capacity as the ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, allow it to come to fruition. Again, it's to be combated by going back to the basics. And the basics, in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, is to go back to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. Again, this is why Jeremy and I have said that the key to unlocking all of the problems that currently face us, both as a nation and as a people, have been with us since the inception of our nation some 235 years ago. That key is, of course, none other than our shared United States Constitution. If we were to return to strict adherence to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of that sacred document at every level of government, then we'd be well on our way to solving the problems that have been rearing their ugly head for well over a half century now. You see, what matters in the United States of America is something that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, as well as the historical revisionists that infest our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border, don't want you to know is that self-accountability, self-responsibility, and ultimately self-determination are the hallmarks of what it is to be an American citizen, what it is to live free and to adorn oneself with the blessings of liberty. You see, deep down, they loathe and despise that. They want to be able to make all the decisions. They want to be able to think. And they don't want you to be able to think for yourself. That's ultimately what it always comes down to with them. This is why you see that they don't want bakers to be able to refuse to bake cakes for gay marriages. This is why they don't want there to be religious liberty, because if you recall, Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto essentially and insultingly referred to religion as the opiate of the masses. But if you look at the atheistic state that they believe in and what they want to force onto people, that too is the flip side of the opiate of the masses. And you see the way that there are those out there who just have this rabid hostility towards any type of profession of faith. It's disgusting, it's disturbing, and it's also violative of the second part of the First Amendment's free religion aspect, which is the free exercise of religion. In other words, they're allowing the state to come in and become illegally entangled with the free exercise of religion by passing laws saying that it's discriminatory to deny baking a cake for a gay wedding, even though that's your own private business. That is an impermissible entanglement of government and religion. But they only want to use that aspect of the First Amendment when it benefits their cause. If it goes against their cause in predictable fashion, they ignore it or say that it's antiquated or say that it's bigoted and hateful. You see, they wish to selectively enforce the clear and concise language that's contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, which is also impermissible pursuant to the clear and concise language contained within the Ninth Amendment to the Bill of Rights, or the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Of course, they don't care about that other than if they can manipulate it and twist it to meet their dark and un-American agenda. And I really do hate to put it that way, but it is the only way that one with a modicum of sanity and reasonability can come to. That's the only logical, sane, and rational conclusion available. And what it really spells out for all of us is that they wish to seek to criminalize certain forms of thought, certain patterns of thought, certain belief systems, which is also directly contrary to the spirit and the letter of the law. Because once again, if we recall that Article 6, Clause 2 of our shared United States Constitution unequivocally states that the Constitution itself composes the supreme law of the land, anything that goes against that language, which is written in such a form of syntax that a fifth grader can understand it, albeit it is archaic English, then it must be void ab initio, or meaning that it is without legal force from the very get-go. Of course, that too is something they don't want you to think about. They don't want you to be able to empower yourself. They don't want you to be able to think for yourself. That's why they try and go out and throw out all of these distractions that they do with domestic terrorist organizations such as the Black Lives Matters organization. And again, when you think about that, it acts in such a way as to be diametrically opposed to all that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And think about what they try and say. They try and say that the Constitution is some quaint, antiquated document that has no applicability in a fast-paced, modern society like that in which we live today. Poppycock. It's a bunch of bovine excrement. Again, it is them tying themselves down with the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism. They don't want you to think that there is one right way and one wrong way of doing things. It's also why you see all of the subterfuge that's included in the Common Core education standards. But ultimately, what that is a power grab by the federal government to try once again to diminish the constitutional role that parents have in rearing their own children. Again, that is also tied into those natural law tenets or the natural order of things that forms the bedrock foundation of not only our shared United States Constitution, but also our federalist, representative, Republican form of government. I wish that I had words of comfort and solace to convey unto you as I sit here and speak into this microphone. But there is nothing comforting, and there is no solace to be found when dealing with the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists whose ultimate goal is nothing less than the sheer and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. What makes the 2016 presidential election cycle all the more devious, for lack of a better term, is the fact that the alternate right, or the alt-right, seems to embrace a lot of the positions that are put forth by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. These tenets are foreign and alien to the American way of life. They are not deeply rooted in the natural law tenets. And so They are also in stark and staunch opposition to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. Now, what I'm saying here may seem abstract. It may seem disconnected from the current state of affairs that is unfurling before our very eyes in this country of ours. But no, it is deeply rooted and is the fulcrum upon which we can point to all of the problems that are facing our nation. It's all rooted in this fact that for generation after successive generation, those who wield the reins of political power, in other words, the political powers that be, have slowly, incrementally, yet steadily allowed the United States of America to slide ever further to the left, to basically exert ever greater control over the facets of our daily lives. Again, this is why Alexis de Tocqueville referred to any form, flavor, or facet of socialism as essentially New Age feudalism. They wish to create a new type of nobility which is able to control yet separate itself from the edicts that will govern the facets of our daily lives. They forget the fact that the principles upon which the United States is founded is that of self-accountability, self-responsibility, thereby allowing self-determination. And the only ones who will stand up for that and defend that are we the people. We're the only ones endowed with that authority. We are the only ones given that capability. And our founding fathers would expect us to be proactive in the maintenance and safeguarding of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. The sad truth of the matter is, folks, they would have been up in arms tenfold already. But the United States of America, in the aftermath of World War II, some 71 years ago, allowed themselves to be convinced that their government was some benevolent force, some force for good that cannot do ill will to the people. And it makes sense how they would have come to that conclusion, having gone up against some of the most wicked, dark, twisted, and evil forces of tyranny, oppression, despotism that this world had ever seen. After all, it was our government that went to war with Nazi Germany and against the fascistic empire of Japan, and it was a long, drawn-out, bloody affair, one of the worst conflicts that the course of human events had ever seen. Mankind was willing to slaughter himself wholesale in industrial fashion. And so it unleashed horrors that had therefore, or up to that point, been previously unimagined. But here we are. We are now some 70 years after the cessation of hostilities for the Second World War, and we find ourselves under a deliberate assault by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist forces that seemingly got a jolt of just energy. They were revitalized by the fact that Adolf Hitler had been against communism. But if you start to parse through the ideologies of National Socialism and that of global communism, there's not much difference. The only true difference that could be spotted is the extent to which they wish to carry it out in the world and the notion of private property or the ownership of private property. It was still severely, curtailed under the tutelage of the Nazi regime to such an extent that it would never pass constitutional muster in these United States of America. But again, that doesn't matter to them. That's not something that they wish to expose in the historical record, so that's why the historical revisionists have done their utmost to try and rewrite the history to paint the Nazis as some sort of radical right-wing organization, a radical right-wing political ideology and philosophy, when in fact nothing, truly nothing, could be further from the truth. They'll attempt to rewrite it and say that Nazism was based on a fascist program, but again, fascism has its roots in socialism as well. But what they try and say, ultimately, was that it was a right-wing ideology just like republicanism used to be a right-wing ideology here in the United States of America. It's intellectually disingenuous, this position they push, but that's what they want to try and do. They want to try and project their own twisted and diabolical schemes onto their political opponents and foes. That way, through projectionism, they're able to label us. They think that their propaganda will stick, and people will just largely, by and large, begin to emote and shut down their mental faculties, refusing to question the diabolical nature of the schemes, plots, and plans that they are unleashing upon this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. But you see, this is why we come forth and produce these programs for you folks. Our entire impetus here, our entire modus operandi is to empower you, to provide you with the tools necessary to help foster that fluent working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Then you will be able to clearly see exactly what their diabolical plots and twists are, and you'll be able to put your foot down and reiterate the most powerful monosyllabic word that is almost universally understood within the English lexicon, that of no. No, these nefarious, frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists will not be able to redefine permanently what our nation is. They will not be able to abridge, belittle, besmirch, and encroach upon our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, and we will not tolerate their attempts to irreparably redefine the United States as something that it was never intended to be. In other words, we can come together, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity, and say that we will protect the natural law tenets, which by their very nature are just as applicable today as they were 235 years ago, as God willing they will be 235 years from now. If it seems that what I'm saying here is repetitive, it's because it's one of those self-evident truths that Thomas Jefferson first brought to the attention of the American populace when he drafted the Declaration of Independence 240 years ago. You see, that's what's so magnificent and amazing with respect to our system of polity. It is the longest contiguous or uninterrupted, constitutionally endowed representative republic that is federalist, which has ever existed throughout the course of human events. That's amazing. Stop and think about just how much has occurred in the time that has elapsed between the foundation of the United States of America to today. We saw all of the revolutions that occurred in Europe, including the French Revolution and then the revolutions of 1848. We saw the rise of socialism, the fall of socialism in many aspects. We saw the rise and fall of communism, the rise and fall of Nazism, the rise and fall of fascism in Italy, all in the course of that time. Yet the light of liberty and the pursuit of happiness remains. When all of those other titular ideas fell by the wayside and went through their inevitable course to failure, we have persevered through it all. Now, that's not to say that we haven't had our challenges in that time. Certainly, the war between the states, what is known in the common vernacular as the American Civil War, was a very trying conflict, one which tore this nation asunder. But we overcame the problems, we were able to rebuild, and we still stand for the same principles that were first put down into our shared United States Constitution 235 years ago. And that is an amazing thing to keep in mind. It shows that the perseverance and the indomitable and inconquerable spirit and will of the American people is a force to be reckoned with. But what these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their allies and the historical revisionists and indoctrinators, as well as the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, have started to do is they've started to take away this idea that we have a national identity. They have gone to the wicked ideology of balkanization. Thereby, they hope to pit American citizen against American citizen to keep us distracted so that we are not paying attention to what their dark and twisted machinations are hoping to achieve, thereby making their complete and total redefinition of American sovereignty complete, total and complete. But the problem is, their propaganda is not boomerang proof. Folks, we can throw it back at them, and that's exactly what we are doing here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. We're doing everything within our power to empower you, to give you the tools to stand up to them, to reject these attempts to fundamentally transform the United States of America away from being a constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic to this frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist dystopia that truly has no place in an open, honest, and above all free society like that of the United States of America. This is our duty, obligation, and above all responsibility. In our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in these United States of America, we must proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. But you see what the domestic terrorist organizations such as the Black Lives Matters organization are trying to do is they're trying to spread fear. They're trying to pit American citizen against American citizen so that we lose sight of what's important. And again, I point back to the prophetic warning that George Washington delivered in his farewell address, that if we allowed ourselves to break into disparate and competing factions, that we would lose sight of the overarching greater picture of importance that drives us both as a nation and as a people. Instead of focusing on the fact that the United States of America as a nation is greater than the sum of its parts, going back to that old adage that the sum is greater than its parts, we instead begin to latch on to penultimate concerns and erroneous ideologies and identities. That's the true wicked nature of identity politics. That is what really works against each and every one of us in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in the United States. That also is the goal that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been working so tirelessly and meticulously towards for the past century and a half. They think they see a light at the end of the tunnel, which will propel them to their ultimate victory. They think their victory is within grasp. Let us be the force that says no, as only we can be. For you see, it's not going to be some messianic figure, some individual or entity that comes down from providence above that says we can place the United States back onto a path to prosperity that will actually be able to achieve such a lofty goal. Our founding fathers loathed and despised and were inherently distrustful of any type of centralized authority. Because if you recall, the entire American War of Independence, which was long, bloody, and drawn out, was fought against the centralized authority of the British Crown and Parliament. It was against notions such as virtual representation, which is beginning to rear its ugly head again in modern politics. We must be as committed to the principles of liberty, justice, and a true sense of equality, not the bastardized version that these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists try to cram down our throats, as our founding fathers were. Now I know that's far easier said than done, but this is why we say don't take what we say at face value. Look into this yourself. Begin to empower yourself, and then we can come together in such a form of unity that we can spark a renaissance in these United States of America and truly begin to place our nation back onto the path to prosperity as no one else can, as no one else is endowed or able to do so. That's the true magnificence and beauty of the near infinite wisdom and foresight that our founding fathers had when they put their heads together and conjured up this beautiful federalist representative republic of ours. That's why we are loyal to that and not to any individual. Individuals come and go. You can kill an individual, but it is far more difficult to kill an ideology. We are the beneficiaries of the greatest birthright of any people on the face of God's green earth, and therefore it is our duty, our obligation, and above all, our responsibility to proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable rights which were endowed to us by our Creator, the God of nature himself. You see, this is what we are dedicated to here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. This is why we are the new resistance. We are the voice of freedom. We will never betray you. We will never abandon our principles, and we will never back down from the foundational image that is greater than the sum of the parts of our nation. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. I guarantee you she's not going to break out in revolt and try and set a fire, but if she does, by some cruel twist of fate, feel free to push her out of the plane. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them here, either at our YouTube page, our Google Plus page, or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, the Blogspot account, which also has audio blogs and is chock full of useful information. And then there is the Cafe Press account, where you can find all sorts of trinkets and goodies and attire and drinking glasses and what have you, with our traditional logo on it and with our first-class passenger logo on it. Folks, there is such a wide array of product at reasonable prices that you are sure to find something that fits your needs. Go ahead and take a gander at that, folks. Give us a little bit of support, and also support yourself as we leave you with this indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment that we always seek to leave you with every time we take off over the friendly airwaves. Thank you again, folks. We will see you next time. Do take care.